her friend takes it and matches that bet, then what betcha.com was doing was taking a percentage of that, and I think it has kind of gotten looked at as being internet as a whole. So, you know, I think that it will have impacts. I mean, this was a very creative business venture, I think, at best. Now, Louisiana took some of their own action based on this case, and under, I believe, their internet gambling statutes. So I think that, you know, the potential for it is not positive, and I think it is outside of really, I mean, if the legislature wants to allow this, then usually what you do in other gambling, what you want to allow is you specifically allow it by passing a statute to allow it, and you obviously have not done that.
And how does this impact our tribal compacts?
I think, again, it could have impact. You know, that's always such a hard question to answer, because really about anything related to all of this could, the same way as multi-state lotteries could have an impact on tribal issues.
So there is an opportunity for them, if the state sanctions, as a court sanctions this type of gaming, then the tribes can do the same for some.
I would imagine they may very well come back and ask for negotiations. I mean, if someone is out there, and I think this is true for really just kind of any type of business, I mean, if there's some way for people to make profit at it, then generally there's a desire to go ahead and do that. I feel very confident that betcha.com is not, if they prevail at the Supreme Court, and if there is no law change, I'm sure others will follow in their footsteps. I don't know why they would not.
Representative Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Chandler was accurate, but the bets I put down is usually at the horse track. And the example you gave sounds very similar to what we call pari-mutuel betting, when you're betting against the other people at the track. It used to be. Now we've expanded that a little bit. But is that the model that this is kind of based on? I know you're not on the horse racing commission, but it sounds a lot like a pari-mutuel system.
I think it could be looked at that way. I mean, really what my knowledge of what they're doing is mainly through my reading of the court documents, and I know one of the comparisons was made to eBay, where you're just trying to, you know, bring people together, and actually the concept there was that if people don't pay on eBay, that you're able to put in a negative rating. And, you know, one thing that I'm not sure if this was just in the pleadings or actually it wasn't in the Division 2 case, but one thing that's very interesting about the whole welching concept is that when we did, and it may have been in the discovery process, asked, well, how many times have people welched? What we found was there was really only one welching that occurred, and that was done by an employee of betcha.com, and that was done so they could test their system. So otherwise, the idea that, well, you can welch, so that shouldn't be gambling, well, that's not what anyone did, short of one person who, it's my understanding, did it so that they could test the system.
And a quick follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chairman, for Amy's using a very technical term here, welching. For those in the audience who weren't on the Gambling Commission for 8 years, welching is?
Welching is basically reneging on a bet, which in theory you can do that on any bet as long as you're willing to accept the consequences of that, which may be undesirable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We'll bring up Nick. I believe you're you have a panel to bring up with you, Ezra Mike Meyer.
We do, Mr. Chairman. Ezra, Brad Nelson, two panels.
We actually have 5 people. Okay, very well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Nick Jenkins. I am the founder of betcha.com. I will start out by telling you up front, I am a former lawyer turned entrepreneur. I do not gamble. I do not make book. I do not smoke. I do not drink. I do, however, like eBay. And a few years ago, I came up with an idea of an eBay for bets. I said, well, wouldn't that be neat if people could post offers for bets on anything they could think of, from politics to pop culture to movies to the over-under on the vote on SB 6103. The universe was wide open. So I sat down like law-abiding citizens should do with the law books in the law library and researched this idea for literally months. And what I came up with was an honor-based system. That is, that bettors on the website were not obligated to pay. They had every right to not pay on simple pain of negative feedback, a lot like eBay. I came up with the idea, raised a bunch of money from seed round investors, friends and family, many of whom are here today, opened an office, the whole 9 yards, hired employees, the whole bit. We launched our website in early June of 2007. 13 days later, the Gambling Commission showed up at my doorstep and said, "We've seen what you're doing, we don't like it, shut down or else." I, being a lawyer, made a huge mistake, I think. I hired a lawyer. And I said, "You know what, we think your theory is wrong, and we want to stand up and fight." And that was a big mistake. We went to the Gambling Commission's office, told them we were filing a declaratory judgment action. 37 minutes later, a single bettor from the state of Louisiana began betting on our website. In total, he made 4 bets for which he bet $35. Our total take was 70 cents. Based on these 70 cents, the next month, I found myself, along with two of my colleagues, the object of a felony fugitive arrest warrant. It was alleged that I had been in Louisiana the whole time, and I had fled the state. 3 trips to jail later, in 2 different states, for, I can't tell you, one time literally the guy got up in court and said, "This guy fled the state, he needs to be in jail, no bail." 3 trips to jail later, I'm back here. Last month, the Washington State Court of Appeals, in a 2-to-1 decision, which I'll get to in a moment, said Jenkins was right all along. This isn't gambling. Not only is it not gambling, there is, quote, "no logical basis to believe it's gambling," that the Gambling Commission's position is rebutted by the plain language, quote, "plain language of the Gambling Act." The Washington Gambling Commission's position is rebutted by its own literature, and that its position would require a strained, absurd reading of the law. Pretty unambiguous. So, with that, we said, hey, let's get back into business. And of course, those plans are now on hold with 6103. They are on double hold because now we've got word that the Gambling Commission, while this bill is pending, has filed a petition for review to the Supreme Court. Ironically, but perhaps not surprisingly, they didn't mention to the Supreme Court of the existence of 6103. So they're trying to get us either which way. With respect to this bill and the merits, I would just say a few things, and then I want to get to some of the issues, Mr. Chairman, that you brought up. Number one, there's a pending action on the very definition that you're being asked to modify. They've appealed this thing to the Supreme Court. We'll be answering in the next few weeks. I don't think you're supposed to be changing the rules during a pending case. Number two, as far as I know, outside of the halls of the Washington State Gambling Commission, there is no support whatsoever for 6103, which I would call the kill betcha.com. I don't want to bet anybody now, but I'll bet you not a single constituent has called anybody on this committee and said, you got to kill betcha.com. Final point, I hope that most people say at the very least this is a pretty neat idea. We have the opportunity to be a huge potential success story. There's a company in England doing something kind of similar to this, not exact, but very similar. It is gambling, it's a slightly different business model. After 4 years, their market cap was $3 billion. In England, the founders of this company were named Innovators of the Year in their country. They won, the 2 guys won like a Queen's Award, one of 40 or 50 people who won such an award. They're being lauded as the greatest entrepreneurs in England. Here, we want to make me a criminal. Something is not quite right. Finally, I want to just address a few points that have come up earlier. With respect to bookmaking, Ms. Hunter said that this is going to somehow increase bookmaking. It is troublesome to me because a betting exchange, of which betcha.com is, competes with bookmakers. In England, the bookmakers want to put companies like us out of business. This is going to decrease bookmaking. It's a bit like saying if you allow this anteater to live, there's going to be more ants.